Oh, you're late? Don't say that, yeah, man. You don't get the lights, please. Okay, it's visible for everybody? No, no. Yeah, that was on one. Yeah, that's good. Everybody can see it? Okay, Srinivas, you're on, man.
Great. I hope all of you can see me.
Yeah, now see there, not here.
Okay. I'll off the I'll off the video because I'm going to share my screen for the day. So hello everybody. So firstly, thank you so much, Agustin, for having me in this meetup. So thank you so much for this, and good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Srinivas, and I am a product manager with Microsoft. So I am part of the Azure DevOps organization, and Azure DevOps is roughly about 700 odd people. So we are across uh, two countries, US and India, and about 4 locations. So that's about the product. So before we proceed, how many of you have used Azure DevOps at least once?
These guys, right? Have you? Yeah,
I
okay.
can see a few hands.
Very cool, man.
So definitely there seem to be folks. So it looks like a mixed audience, right? Few have used and few have not used.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the mix.
Yeah, great. So in today's discussion, so what I will try to do is I will try to show you a live scenario, what it looks like, right? So we use Azure DevOps to build Azure DevOps. So pretty much what our customers and users have is what we have to build our systems. So I will take one example and show you. I'll walk you through like right how does that like starting from a user issue or a request to ultimately actually shipping it. Right. So I will walk through that flow. So it'll be I have kept some browser tabs open so that I can save time in loading pages and stuff like that. So overall, I'll be walking through the flow of from a customer request to the deployment. So while I do that, I will also probably a little, deep dive a little bit into each of the verticals, right? For example, when I'm in the code, I'll talk about a little bit on the code, a little bit on the build and the pipelines, a little bit on the work, stuff like that. So I'll also cover a bit. And if you have any questions or anything that you want me to stop for, please feel free to do so. Okay, so can we get started? I would assume that's a yes. Okay, so we have something called developer community, not visualstudio.com. So what happens is, as a user, so user can either report an issue or ask for a feature request, right? For example, so if you go to developercommunity.visualstudio.com and if you select Azure DevOps, you'll see a bunch of issues that users have reported and a bunch of requests that users have submitted, right? So we have both. Now, obviously, users can upvote them and basically, right? So the more the upvotes, the higher the priority for the product team to prioritize it in their backlog. So let me take one of these problems. So what happens is, as you can see here, right? So there are about 80 upvotes and folks give the description and there are comments and etc. So the moment a user submits a feedback, so we automatically Azure DevOps automatically what it does is it creates an internal ticket, right? So if you click on this, it actually creates something like this. It creates a work item in the Azure boards. So whatever that public facing basically the feedback that gets there is a copy internally that gets created for the teams to prioritize on it, right? So this is not the same as the one I chose in the previous screen, but the concept is here. So now you have a work item. I can go ahead and assign it to. So what happens is right based on the actual feature. For example, if it happens to be in the identity, so it will get assigned in the identity. So we have some rules based on which we assign this feedback into the appropriate teams. But of course, somebody could go back and change the teams, right? They can assign it to the appropriate team, they can assign it to a person, and they can assign it to a particular iteration. So this for the folks who don't know, right? So this is a work item which belongs in the Azure DevOps Boards. For folks who have used Jira, right? So it's pretty similar to like when you have a bug or a user story where you have all sorts of information, right? There's an information on what that issue is, right? So and how do you right? So there are oaths and you can discuss on it, and then you can have attachments, so a bunch of stuff. So once you create this, right? So let me actually show you. So right. I can create a feature out of that feedback ticket. The reason is, right, so similar to like breaking down the story, right, you have a feature at the large. If it is a considerably large one, you will have a feature, and then you will have user stories and then tasks and stuff like that. So you can categorize it, right? For example, somebody, let's say a user from a team has has basically added in the attributes and created a feature out of it. Now, a part of this, so we also do something called a release notes. Essentially, right, once we fix this, right, what will it look like? So you kind of write it down before you get started, so that, right, once we ship this, right, once the fix is done and when the deployments are done, automatically it gets published in the Azure DevOps release notes, right? So it's kind of a, right, you can see here, right? So you can release notes required true, right? So you can see this button here. What it essentially means is, right, so once the developer picks this work and finishes it, like it's up for the users to actually see that product feature. Okay, so now user starts here. And so before I go further into the how does the coding start, right? So there is a notion of boards, backlogs, sprints, etc. At a very high level, right? So the Azure DevOps Boards gives you 3 different types of views, right? Or 3 different types of way of seeing the data. So one is the work items, which gives you a list of all the sets of work in your project, right? So you can use different filters to like filter them and see this is actual list of work. Now you can also organize them in terms of your backlogs, right? Backlogs and boards, etc., right? Which is essentially viewing your data from a features, and then, right, so if you have a product roadmap, let's say you have a feature and then list of user stories underneath it and stuff like that. And then you have a views based on sprints. So right, so like most of us, like, right, so today we use Agile. So if you use an Agile methodology, so you can choose a particular sprint. So right, so this is sorry, the page. Sorry about that, right? So yeah, so as you can see, this is a sprint 148, and you can choose any sprint and see what was the work that was taken, what was pending, and stuff like that. Obviously, you can view it in a board view also, which is a swim lane kind of a view, right? So let me show you this. So you know who is doing it. You can actually go by, right? So you can see who, like a person in a team, what is the person working, right? So essentially you can group it by, sorry?
Nothing.
Yeah, right. So you can view from a sprint information also. Now, as projects grow, obviously there's a lot of work items, right? In Jira world, you have something called JQL, right? Jira Query Language, where you can kind of filter down the kind of work you have, right? So we have a pretty much similar thing. So you have something called queries. So if you know, like, for example, it's assigned to a particular person or it belongs to a particular project, obviously you can add that. It's pretty simple. So you can just, it's a pretty UI thing, right? So you can just add a field and just fill in your fields, right? And then you can just run a query. So you can run the queries. And there's a pretty cool thing called as plans. Plans is also all about, hey, you want to showcase, great, this is whatever I was talking about works very well with the teams, where the team has a view of what they're doing. And let's say you want to have this a high level bird view, right? Let's say 10,000 feet overview that you want to showcase it to your leadership or something like that. So we have something called plans. You can see, right? So you can actually see like what is happening on February, March, April. Say this is a live our product backlog, right? So somebody can go here and see. Sorry, somebody can. You can actually see what are the features that are getting shared, and see you can also see this is the current date. You can add milestones and bunch of stuff like that. Okay. So this is the high level overview. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward, pretty intuitive, right? So, and I would suggest you all to play with it. So, so let me get back to where we were, right? Which is, hey, you got a feedback ticket. Let me start with this, right? There's also a search, right? So you can just do, which is essentially, it gives me assigned to, let's say a particular user, let's say, right? Let me just take one random feature. Let me take this, right? Which is what I was showing you a little while back. Now, user has requested a feature, has reported an issue. So we have created a feature. Let's say I want to get started with the work. So can you see there's something on the right-hand column? There is a development, right? What this essentially means is, right? So go to this links. So given a work item, right? So this is a application lifecycle management, right? At the end of the day, DevOps, Azure DevOps, the product that you're seeing is the ALM, right? How do you manage the entire life cycle? So now that you have created some piece of work, obviously you want to create some piece of code, and then you want to make a commits, and then you want to integrate in a build, and you want to take it, right? So it all happens pretty seamlessly. So what do? You just add a link. You can add a branch, and you can, let's say you can choose a branch from, let's say my branch, just right. So essentially, right, you create a branch, you want to start work, right? So you can see that it would have created a branch, right? See, it just created a branch, and you can start the work, right? So you can create here. It just let me go here, right? So for example, let me say this for example time for the moment, right? Now you go here, you can go to this branch, let's say, for example, and then just like just it's well, this branch I don't know publisher, right? So just you can go to the just a minute, right? So let me just pick up a file. Let me make actual changes. I will not choose. Let's say just a proxy. So shared and then proxy. Let's say take object provider. And I'll do an edit. Right? You can do whatever, right? So I don't want to make any changes here. Just and then you try to commit whatever, right? Once you commit the changes, and then you can, so once automatically you can create a pull request. Now, once you create a PR, like you just give some, right? So there are already certain files in the PR, right? So some changes that I've already made. So you take all these changes and you merge it in the master, right? So you started with a piece of work, somebody has made certain changes, and then you try to merge it, right? So what happens is this, right? It's not like before it get actually merged to the master, obviously there are reviewers, right? So then you can add reviewers and certain things are enforced. So let me go here, right? So given a repository, so what you can do is, let me open up the settings here. Let me open this and duplicate tab. Right, so then you have a repository, given a repository. Take any repository, right? So if you take this branches, right? So just take this branch. Let me take something smaller. Azure DevOps is super large, so this will. I can see that now, right? Okay, can you see it? Can you see my screen with the code flow? So what happens is, right? So when you have this repository, right? So these are the, like, you add the user group, and there's no, then when you go to the options, it tells you, right? So like how many branches you want to configure. Sorry, I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Right, so what are the work items that you have, and you can check for credentials and secrets, like basically if there are any like you don't want to have explicit user IDs and passwords, right? So and you can also set up, right, what are the basic unit tests that you want to run before before something can be actually pushed to the build, right? So let me go back here. Now you raise a pull request, and let's say somebody approves it, right? So let's and somebody has changed, right? You can already take one of the commits, right? So let me show the flow. Right. So and if you go here and take this pull request. Say this is the pull request. As you can see, right? So this is a real one, right? Where the commit has been failed, because you can see here. So it has failed one of the validations. Any questions so far? I'm assuming now. Okay. So now once the changes are pushed to the master, so then what happens is, right, there is a build that gets triggered, right? So now the changes have been code reviewed, they have passed the sanity tests, and it's good to get to integrated with the master, right? So and so if you take here, right, so there is this build, and obviously, right, once a particular repository, we have certain builds that get invoked based on like how you configure the repository. Now, this is a simple example, and once it runs, right, so you can also open it here. Like you can go to artifact, test pipelines, and then you can go to builds. Right. So once the change happens, you can see that right now there is Azure DevOps, right? So these are the builds that have succeeded. Take any of the changes. These are all the bunch of tasks that have been executed, right? And then you can go to a summary. What are the artifacts that got published? What are the linked work items? A good example would look like this. I will show you just a minute, please. This one that I was wondering. Just give me a minute, please. Yeah. So this is a good example I wanted to show you. So once the deployment happens, right? So once the build is successful, right? You create certain artifacts. These are the tests that you run along with it. And these are the bunch of changes, right? So there could be multiple changes going to the master along with the list of work items associated, right? So you can define a build. So how do you do that? So you can go to the builds, go to a new build, right? You can choose Azure DevOps repo. So right, for example, this is the repo that I want to choose. Choose a certain template, for example, let's say Maven, then apply. Sorry. And then you can define a bunch of tasks, right? So like you can add more tasks, right? So what would you want to do? Let's say you want to test something, you want to finally deploy it. So a bunch of tasks, right? Let's say you could just add this task, go to this task, define the commands. So for example, the standard ones come with the standard templates, right? Like if you have this Maven, right? So this is the POM file, this is where the test results are, and it will also tell you where it will output your build. If you come here, then output variables, it will also give you an output option. Right? Here you go. This is a J option goal. Okay, so once you define this build, right? So and then you can actually run for the changes that you made, and you have these artifacts that are outputted. Now, once you have the build there, so obviously then you go to the next step is to have a release. So release is all about deployment part, right? So build, right? So if you see it from a conceptual part, now you have made the changes. These are pushed to the master, and they are built, which is essentially saying that hey, they're compiled, and if any validations are done, and it's good to merge it to the master. Now, while that happens, right? Once you build it, right, then you actually deploy in any production systems, right? You have multiple stages of deployment. Something like maybe you have UAT staging, and in Microsoft world we call them rings. So we have this multiple rings. So essentially we have the stage 0, stage 1, stage 2, where you want to deploy the same piece of thing, obviously with the different checks, right? So maybe different people have different approvals for different rings. There are different conditions that you want to check for in different rings. So we call that a pipeline, right? So a typical pipeline looks something like this. So let me take any of the examples that we have, right? So this is market L2. Just a minute, sorry. Sorry, just my browser is hanging. Just give me a minute, please. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. The self-test code, right? Reliability.
Correct, but the problem is my browser is stuck. Oh God. Just give me a minute, please. Sorry, just I'm trying to load the browser. I'm sorry, just give me a minute, please. Okay, so this is how a pipeline looks like, right? So if I go to this is a TFS deploy pipeline, and just close this. Well, this is my TFS deploy, right? So I can create a pipeline. So let me show you how to create one. And once you create a pipeline, so there are two things to note in a pipeline, right? One, what is it that you want to build? And what are the stages, right? When I say the stages, what is the flow that will look like? So when you go with the artifacts, which is where you add your build, right? So whatever the builds that you already defined, I could choose, right? So that is the one which I want to have it in the pipeline. Followed by when do you set a schedule? Like when do you want to trigger this pipeline? So if you have this continuous integration, right? So what it will mean is whenever there is a new build, right? You can either can have it periodically or you can just do it, right? So the pipeline gets triggered. And then you can add stages. Stages is essentially, right? So for example, if I could have a simple prod and a pre-prod stage. Now in that stage, there are two important concepts which are pretty cool here, right? So let me just, let's say I want to deploy here. Right, and then this is the stage name. And then just save this, okay? Now, what you can do is there's something called pre-deployment conditions and post-deployment conditions. So what you can do is you can enforce certain things, right? There's something called release gates. So basically, you will only push it to a particular environment if you have certain approvals, which is what you call as the pre-deployment approvals. And then you have certain gates where you can have a particular conditions, right? Maybe it can in terms of a certain test, in terms of certain queries that you can execute to see if the code that is going to be deployed in this environment meets all your conditions, right? So and then you can define your tasks, right? So you can define the checks, then you can define your tasks on what do you want to do, right? As part of the deployment, you can deploy it to Azure, you give your Azure details, and I won't go too much into the variables and task groups. For the simple scenario here, like you define your tasks, and if you want to have any post-deployment checks again, you can add them again. So in live, this is how it looks like. Sorry, I lost that somewhere. Right. This is how it looks, right? So this is a live TFS deployments that are happening right as we speak. As you can see, the blue ones, right? They're really running in production right now as we speak. So once you define all of that, well, this is how it looks like, right? So then you know whether something has failed or passed, and then you have logs. You can check that. And how do you monitor all of this, right? So obviously there's a lot of builds happening in the production, right? So we have dashboards. If we actually see here, right? These are the live deployments happening on Azure DevOps as we speak, right? So these have succeeded, these are in progress, these have failed. You can open the dashboard, it will tell you what has failed, and it will give you, right? You can see the overview here itself. Just hover over here, it will tell you what has failed. You can go there, you can check what has failed in the build. And sorry, it's taking a lot of time. Right, you can see, right? Some tests have failed. So, and hence the build has failed. So you can monitor all of that. You can monitor your production builds, deployments, and then act on them. Well, so once it is successful, right? Once all the stages have been deployed, now let us going back to the user request. So what happens is once all stages are done, it gets deployed in the production, and release notes get automatically updated, right? Which means you go there, and if I go to my earlier story, which is the, so I think I closed it. If I go to my earliest the feature that I have created, it automatically says deployed, and you close that feature. And so once the release notes are updated, the users get to see it, and that's the end of the work that started. So that's all I have from my side. So I know I had to rush through this, but there's a lot in the product, right? So this gives you a bare bones flow of how we can start with work, then integrate, like how can you have the work code, basically coding integrated with your work. Now, once you do the coding, how can you push it, right? How can you merge that with the build, right? How can you integrate with the build, and how can you integrate that with pipelines? So I just try to present a very bare bones overview of it. Obviously, there are lots of complex scenarios that you can achieve through this product. Do you have any questions for me?
Hi, so let's. Who's it? You have? Okay. Can you please introduce yourself and no, don't need to stand up. No, sit there only.
Yeah, hi, myself, Sunu Sora.
You can hear, right, Srinivas?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I have a question. On a given screen, there is a permission for approval and rejection, right?
The gates.
Yes. So, what is the process for PRDI? DevOps guys can set the reviewers, or is there already a hierarchy present to review the code and mark as approved for further movement?
Great question, right? So let me break down your question into two parts, right? So whenever you do a deploy, so right, so there, when you talk about approvers, right? So if I understand correctly, there are approvers in two different phases. One is during the coding part, and second is during the deployment part. So let me start with the deployment part here, right? So if I open my screen, right, and if you go to the TFS deployments here, right, and then if I try to edit, right. So let me show you what that means. So when you have these approvals, right, here, whenever, for right now it's disabled, but if you had enabled it, you can set who those users are. So usually, typically, the approvers in deployment are very different from the approvers in the coding phase, because these are, like, in some sense, the environment gatekeepers. Sometimes could be the engineering managers, could be the directors, depending on the environment, right? For example, in a production, you might need, let's say, directors approving it, right? And maybe in the staging, maybe a manager or some architects approving it. Whereas in a PR, right? For example, right? Let me go to a PR scenario. A PR could have a mandatory reviewers who are coming from your team, which who would be a mandatory reviewers, right? You can define for a given in a PR template, you can define who those mandatory reviewers are, and you can add obviously optional reviewers as well, like whoever you think is a subject matter expert in your team. But these folks, right? So this notion of this enforcing certain reviewers on a PR is dependent on organization to organization. For example, in Microsoft, it is mandatory, but in some, let's say in a very small organizations, they can choose to not have mandatory folks added in a PR template. So in that case, you as a developer get to choose who your reviewers are. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, I think Srinivas, from my side, can you explain based on test plans and all this? Also, I think so. It will also help the folks out here how you can get traceability. Suppose if a build failed, what is it exactly? Which you can trace right up to the epic to what it belongs to. Can we have that soon, Srinivas?
Yes, we can. That's a great question again. So let me take a failed build. So let me look up for that. Right. So let me go here. Let me take up one of the failed builds.
Just give me. I mean, I'm giving my example. Right, we had a CVC used in Docker, right? All containers. So we had to run a lot. So all our builds were failing.
Got it. Got it.
So we got to know what epic is okay and what other features could be side by effective. So this is a great way just to say okay this or ये इसका पूरा इधर है this could possibly affect. So that's a really good visualization for you.
Yes. Yes. This is running in progress. Let me take a one which has failed. Right. Let me actually show you the flow. These are all the ones which are running today, as you can see, right? There's so many releases happening running as we speak. Let me take something which is.
We can also do a successful. I'm just trying to make sure that they can see a traceability of how itself. So suppose
No, they're still in progress.
Yeah. So
they're all running in progress.
Yeah.
They're not yet successful yet.
How about yesterday's build? Anything from yesterday's pipeline?
Yes, I'm just trying to pull.
Because I think so we must have sent on AKS also because we did this update on Docker, so there must be a new update that is onto the AKS management nodes. So all those
dashboard must be having, right? So let me see. Let me take this, right? Something has failed here. Let me start with that. Right, if we go here and let's say this has failed. Right, so this is the one which has failed. Now this is whatever it is. Right, so you can actually wait a minute, just a minute, please. Let me go to the test. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull this up. Give me a minute, please. Let me just pull that up. Yes, so whenever a build fails, right? So what happens is board and yes, so you have these errors, right? So yeah, so this one has failed, right? If you go here.
Srinivas, can you expand that, please? Because guys at the back have got to see these fonts.
Are you able to see my screen?
Can you see a little bit more, please? We have to squint, I think, so to see this. Better?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Yes. What I'm saying is right. So, but sorry, but my.
No, this is okay. No problem. So long as we can see these false ones.
Right. So let me just. I think this is let me maximize this. Okay, so when it has failed, right? It is so. For example, this build has failed, right? Now, when you fail this, there are you can see the two scenarios, right? So runtime exception found, test failures whatever. Like if you click on this, you can actually, you're getting an error message here. Test failures are no tests in release. I think here this is because of lack of tests, not because of some code issue. And
Actually, that gives a good segue. Then we can see, okay, in the test plans, what is not there, right?
yes, in the test plans, right? Once you go to the test plans, that's correct. You get actually you can actually get a dump of what that is. Wait, let me pull that. I don't have that handy, but then I can share that. Will that be okay? Like, once I am done with this session, I will share you an example of a test plan and how that looks like.
Yeah, sure.
I need to pull that up. Yes, but though I'm not sure whether it will take it back to the work item that has created it. That I'm not sure. I know when the test fails that I know which part of it has like broken, which part of the code or something like has broken, but I'm not sure if it can link back to the work item. That I need to check.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know that the code that has broken is something that you does that explain partly your question?
Okay, I mean, you're understood, right? Okay. Yeah. Um, there's actually a bit. If you ask me, the test plan doesn't like really gel into. You need to. I need to see some integration going forward for that, right? Integration in a sense, a good fluent traceability, right? You know, this test plan fail, where it is failing, and what will impact. That is most important because in ops, right? Suppose see, like we had a Azure outage, right? The essentially DNS went off. So how do you know? Okay, if it went off, what will it affect? Who it will affect? And the ops guy has to be knowing, right? Because वो तो call उठाएगा. So you'll have to see, boss, किधर fail हो, and what possibly could affect, and what feature gets affected, right? Because see, at the point is the test will say, okay, this add, suppose this variable got failed, no, adding 1 2 variable got failed, but what does it, where does it really go and what does it mean? Which feature gets affected or not? That's a really good way to say it because the ops guys will say, okay, ये फट सकता है.
Fair. I completely agree with you. Yes, given a test plans, like I can pick up some of the tests and actually show you, right? So so unfortunately I don't have any of them ready with me. Yes, but traceability back to the work that has done it, I doubt, but definitely you can get it, right? So if I take it the TS main run, if I actually take this, right? So I'm actually trying to pull up one of the tests. And then if you take an outcome, right? Let me minimize the screen because I'm not able to see my full screen. And I like maximize it, right? So once you have this, right, you have an attachment, which is this is your test plan, traceability, outcome resolution. Let me pull that up and share with you, right? You have this test results, and then here, you got it. Well, there are the certain bugs.
Okay,
looks like
cool.
it does link back to the work items, right? You're able to see what I just showed you?
Have you? I mean, don't nod ahead, Timmy. You're from Bombay, man.
Okay, whatever. Let me show that again, right? So what I did is I took this one of the test runs, got it, and then gone to the test results. And the test results are these are the bunch of the tests that it runs. Let me just take an example. Now this tests on these two work items, right? So I'm assuming, right? So in case of a failure, you know which are the work items that have caused the test result to fail. Does that make sense?
Cool. Yeah, one question. Yeah.
Click on this one when the test plan fails. For example, for a particular feature at that point, okay, this is the question. Bugs have not been raised at that point. How they will be different?
No, sorry. Can you please repeat the question once again?
Yeah. So once the test results fail, after that you actually raise the bug in that way. Bugs are
No. Why will I? I know the test is failed, right?
so as an ops guy, you know that the test has failed.
failed.
So you go over there and what you will see.
And you can see up where it could, a test fail is at the bottom level, but something on top may not work, right? At the UI level or something, because someone is picking up a call, right? And oh, ye chal nahi raha hai. He can know, okay, why it is not working. Okay, so that's one of the important things. See, I mean, every showing green. Actually, DevOps is not showing green. It's where the red is, boss. Because at that time when you're getting all these calls, you don't want to see green. You want to see where the red is and why it is coming.
The reason being they have not been integrated with the test plans to this. See, what would have happened is, right, they need to integrate with the test plan here. You got what I'm saying, right? So these are for the builds that have integrated test plans. So what will happen is you might have tests running parallelly, right? And that as part of a build itself, not but necessarily part of a test plan. So they would have failed.
Test plan is a separate artifact. I won't
That's
say
right.
artifact. Some other is a separate part of the Azure DevOps.
Yes, that's correct. It's not really like, as of now, we are trying to make it more tightly integrated. But for now, yeah, you can have something in a test plan and not there in the build. And you can have something in a test in the build, not necessarily sitting in a test plan. That's the reason.
So hopefully, at the start, hopefully you've seen how you break, epics into user stories, use cases, and then features and all. Have you shown that, Srinivas?
I have
Like,
not. I can show it like
because that's the really first thing is the top level, right? I mean, suppose we're building something of some app, so there'll be some broad swaths of features that will be obviously they'll never be done in one first sprint, right?
yeah, absolutely.
It will go across sprints to do it, but it is important, right? Suppose like deployment to Azure is not like a one-time stuff. You keep on deploying, right, and you'll add some more things, right? So that's a good thing to put in one epic.
Absolutely. Like very simple, right? You go to the Azure Boards and then you go to the new work item, right? You can start with something like a scenario. Scenario is the largest one, right? Scenario is essentially like an epic of sorts. Let's say I create this, I assign it to myself, and then I make this I put this in backlog, I make this in, I put it in modern interactions and search, and then say that I could just create this, bingo. Then you got this feature. Now, again, right, you can just go here, create links, as I told you, right? It's again, remember, I told you this is a lifecycle management. You create a new item, and then that will be a child. See, right? It's pretty smart. Like once you have it, it will create a child, which is a feature. Which is a feature. We will talk about boards deployment. All right. It has created boards deployment. I will just proposed it. It's in the same backlog. Let me say I want to take this up in this sprint. So let me just say call it 148, and then I'm going to add some data. Right. So when you see this big epic, you can actually see a child. And so right, when you actually open in that backlog view, you'll actually see that entire tree node. Now you can actually go to the boards deployment, and then you can do the same. You can go here, you can add a link, you can add a new item, or you can already attach it to a existing item. In this case, a user story and web deployment. This is a user story. It's a proposal state. I want to take it up in this. I can add description, add that, and do save and close. Right? So for given this feature, the child is this user story and the parent is this epic. Now this can have another child and then you can start work on it, right? Sounds cool?
Okay. Yeah, okay, few more questions. This is Bombay, we keep asking questions. Tell me.
Oh, this is good. This is fun. Thank you so much. I mean, if there are questions I'm not able to answer, I'll get back to you. And I will reply all of them to Augustine. But I would seriously urge you all, if you have any open questions, please feel free to ask.
Right now we see that
I don't need to look at me. You can look at him. It's at the camera.
So it's epic. We broke down it, right? But it
might be the game like same case like the release in two steps. Like two release are, so we are delivering in the two steps.
Okay.
Got release in the first month and the second one, right?
Okay.
So how we can link the like release task into the irrespective of the release notes.
Srinivas, you got it?
No, I could not hear his question at all.
Repeat once again, please.
Can you speak a bit louder, please? I'm unable to hear.
This is recording, huh? It's getting recorded, so you have to speak a bit louder for others.
So can we have some like can we link the stories or epics to our specific releases so that we can say that these are the stories that are going in the first release and these are going into the second release, irrespective of the release notes, because the release notes can have the document and then we can publish.
Yeah.
But in this tracking tool, can we have that?
Yes, I think so. Srinivas, can you show him?
Absolutely, absolutely, fantastic. It's a great question, but I just showed you some time back, right? So if any work item, right, any work item in Azure DevOps will have an attribute called as iteration, right? So this essentially tells you iteration is like what? Iteration is a time box, right? A time window. For example, right? This when I say it is part of 148. What this means is that this will be part of 148 release, right? That's what it essentially means, right? So if I have this, if I'm marking this for 148 and if I have this release notes, so what it'll do is automatically, if it is part of Azure DevOps, let's just for example, right? Let me not add anything here. So just, but once you choose the release for 148, it automatically gets tagged to 148 release, right? That's one. Number two is, right, again, I remember using queries, you can get all the user stories and work items as part of 148. You can just type where iteration path is equal to sprint 148. Also, again, right, you can also go to something called sprints. Now, given a sprint, right, sprint is again that iteration path boundary. Now go to a sprint, go to, let's say, any number in the past, let's say 130, right? If you go here, these were all the part of that release. These were all the stories that went as part of 130, right? You could explicitly look up based on a query. You can go to a sprints view and see what was part of 130, right? Or you can even go to plans, right? You can go to any of the views. In fact, the interesting part in boards is in every view you get to see what you're asking, which is essentially saying, right, this is what the views plans is. Let me minimize all. Now you say this is 149. It'll show you if I go here, right? This is all getting shipped as 148. If you look at 148, this is the work happening. So if you ask me what is part of 148 release, these are the ones that are part of 148. Does it explain? Does it answer your question?
Yep.
Yeah. In fact, it is there in every view. Every view. In fact, in queries, in sprints, in plans, in backlogs, everything. You can actually put a filter on every of them just with the iteration path. Right. Again, see, right? This is how my backlog looks like. Backlog is essentially, hey, this is my like what do you call the entire laundry list of my team. See, you can see here, right? On the right side, you can actually see on 148, this is what is happening. 149, this is happening. You can just click on it and it'll take you there. As simple as that. You can actually see as a board also. Then again there you will get it by, right? So just minimize this. Right, so how do I? Right, so if you can go here, this is actual swim lanes view, right? And then you can have a filter and then you can have an iteration. So this is what is happening for 148. Does it make sense? Yeah, great, awesome.
Any other questions? Oh yeah, more questions. Cool.
My question is
Just
more,
be a loud, speak aloud.
my question is more related to release pipeline. The problem statement is I was working for one of the client where the subscription has been owned by client and they have assigned us as an owner. Now when I try to deploy a node application into web app, it gives an error saying that configure manage service identity for virtual machine.
Yeah.
So I try to look out for that error into the web, but doesn't get much information. But if the same problem statement I run on my Azure subscription, it works fine. I'm not sure what's going on that.
But what that has to do with Azure DevOps?
Because it comes into the release pipeline when you're going to deploy into
Okay.
that web app part of the Azure.
Okay.
It fails. But if I run the same pipeline into the own subscription owned by me, it works fine.
So you're saying because you're just being owner, you cannot run those pipelines.
Yeah, but I didn't find much for information about that error into the web as well.
Okay.
Why it is failed. Because there's no change apart from the subscription.
Srinivas, want to take a stab at that?
Unfortunately, I don't know if I totally get your question for this.
Okay,
Uh,
here's the thing. He's working for a client. The client
uh,
has made him the owner for that organization basically, and
okay.
he's running a release which gets failed. Now, when he does the same thing on his own subscription, it passes.
Got it.
What are
I
the logs? What are the other errors are giving out?
So basically, I'm releasing a node application to the web app,
Ah.
but the log says that configure managed service identity for virtual machine.
So the MSI is not working properly
Yeah.
for you.
So what does we need to figure it out? What does MSI is and how we can resolve that issue? That I can resolve that part.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
I got your question, but at least I don't know the answer. I really don't know, right? So, like, I can help you in a way that you can, whatever the question is there, if you drop me a mail, I can put you in touch with the pipelines team. Honestly, why, even if you have with having an access, it
I
is
think so.
the
This is
release
right.
fail.
The MSI is saying something with the identity. The identity, organization, and the subscription are not coming together. So even if you are made owner, basically owner maybe some tag is gone there, but that's not gone right through. Okay, and because Azure will be sandbox and make sure the permissions are like top notch. There's nothing less in terms of permission. It will fail if you find something that is not.
Yeah, but again, it is related to web app, but why it's something on the virtual machine end?
Because your web app is basically getting developed on a virtual machine.
And that app service plan has been owned by me as well, so I'm still not sure.
App service works it, but somewhere it has to be deployed. It's getting deployed on a VM behind. Okay, that's the reason it's giving. So when it get the deployment on the VM, that's failing, and that's failing because of permission issue. Okay, but you send us and I'll forward to Srinivas and we'll try to get me a solution for that.
Okay, all right. I will
Okay,
do that.
I
but
had a very similar issue
hey,
with a previous client. So what they did finally is that they created a user for me in their organization, and then that works.
Similar cases with me.
and he's been made owner also.
I got a user created by the client within their organization. So I wasn't using my account anymore. I was using their subscription. I was
So now he's the part of that organization. Basically, he's part of that organization.
In my case, we are different activity for.
Yeah, that's right. And they would want to, and we don't want to mess with that. We want to be as true as possible to the organization boundaries. Also. Yeah. Anything else? Sorry.
At the start of the
You have to
session,
speak a bit louder, please.
yeah, at the start of the session, we saw that
I can't hear you. Sorry.
upon receiving a ticket, a task is automatically created in Azure DevOps. At the start of the session, we saw that. So, do we have integration to other ticketing systems like Zendesk or ServiceNow also?
So that is something that we have done for us, custom made. So no, at this point of time, sorry. We have just we have with that. That's for us internally.
Okay. But hey, it will be open source, hopefully.
Yes, yes, yes. But today, if you look at it, right, this developer community
Okay.
is a Microsoft feedback portal, right? So eventually, yes, eventually you could have any feedback system, and then uh, uh, basically you could call the basically create a sorry, feedback ticket. You could use as Azure functions, and right, you can just invoke that. But sorry, but at this point of time, we don't have.
See, you're right. I mean, if you know why I gave that, because we are coming from a real ops situation, right? So in the end, it will converge to that. Right now, it's not there. But if you look and see how the things are happening, more for the roadmap, I think so it should come because really you want to say, okay, this is a call I have, क्यों आया, किधर पटा. Simple as
Yes, I think and I think using Azure functions, like basically there are APIs where you can actually create one that I know for sure, but like how does it look in the product roadmap that I need to check. But definitely yes, I mean that's a fantastic question. I completely get the value out of it.
any others? Yeah, I mean, let's also get a feel of the room. Yeah. Yeah, so we are like a full house. I mean, this is the max we can accommodate in this.
I hope my session was of use to you. I know this. I had to rush up a bit, but feel free to explore it and get back to me with any questions, and I'll be more than glad to like walk through it. There's so much in the product. See, that honestly, right? Even covering a overview itself can be. There's a lot of lots of scenarios around them.
Sanjay, you have another last question apparently.
The other one was like, I had used TFS in one of my.
Can you speak a bit louder, please?
Yeah, I had been using TFS in one of my projects. So
Uh-huh.
this one looks like a extension to TFS. So is it like that or?
Srinivas, I think so. You must be getting at this question. Is this an extension of TFS?
Well, great question. So it's good. I'm happy to hear. I'm happy to know that at least there's someone who knows what TFS there. Great. So actually, right. So Azure DevOps and TFS are exactly the same, right? So the code base is same. The people working on it are same. The entire product suite is same. So one is a hosted solution, one is an on-premise solution. TFS stands for Team Foundation Server, which is going to become Azure DevOps Server, like from this year onwards. So both are essentially the same. See, right. This is a cloud-based hosted, right? So where the entire data sits on Microsoft servers, and then you can have a project operated, etc., etc. Whereas TFS is where there are some of the enterprises and organizations want to have this hosted on their data centers and stuff like that. But see, from a capability perspective, from the functionality, I mean, they're absolutely the same. Yeah, but that's true that TFS will be lagging by a few months compared to Azure DevOps, obviously, right? Because we do yearly twice updates to the TFS, whereas Azure DevOps is, as I said, right, every sprint you get to see the features being shipped. Both are same.
Okay. Can you see this? This is our. This is. Can you? I don't know whether Srinivas, you can see this.
I can't see your screen. Just a minute. Let me. Should I stop? Yeah, I can see you now. Tell me.
No, not me. Can you see my screen?
No, no, I can't. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yeah.
Stop your sharing and. Okay, so where am I? Yeah. So as we told you, we are also using Azure DevOps, and we told right this year we're restarting a blacklist. So how that's going to happen? So basically, it's an app. Okay, so this is what we have Visage. So next time you come, and once you register and you got confirmed, we'll be sending you a link that you upload your photos, your government ID, last 4 days, and then we'll track you out. So next time you come on no show, you come late, you're getting banned. For 1 year. Okay, so this is a project we're using. We're having Docker cognitive services. We're having AI ML, as I mentioned, your screening question. They're all put to a scoring now. So please don't come and tell me, hey, this, that, this. And you have to be, I've seen you all have written like one cell, one word. No machine learning algorithm is going to give you a score, good score anyway. You know that, right? So this is what's happening. So this is what we're doing. We're getting it a little bit. Testing is going on. So putting out this, your face, your APIs, you'll get registered. We put this all up, and if you have no show, we'll get a mail. Anytime they're registered, it will automatically cancel for next 6 months. So this is what's happening. And if you look, there's an overview of what we are, what we're doing. Can you see this, Srinivas?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so let's go to the dashboard. This is my cursor. Yeah, this is the dashboard. So we can give you what's happening. I didn't put up here. Let's look at the board. So actually, as a new project, what are you going to start? You're going to first start. See, this is a running project, right? Azure DevOps. So Srinivas is showing you, okay, these are the sprints. You never come to sprint first. Project kya banayega, right? Then we see what we'll do in this month. So you see this, okay, I need to deploy the app security, create an authentication service for Eventbrite, add login statement. So what do you see is basically shipping our own champagne, right? that's what as you said, we are using Azure DevOps to build Azure DevOps, right? So that's what we are also trying to do, and all this has come through. So this is what's happening. I just wanted to give a gist that things are getting a little more. We're upping our game, and we're basically using the technology what you're deploying and showing, right? Srinivas, hope you got a feel of that what we're doing too.
Yes, absolutely fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you see some scenarios, you see features, you
Yes,
see
like different types of work items and yeah.
yeah, cool. So and they are like real. This is a real project, right? I mean, even that was a big, but that's huge scale. But this is like you can relate to what's happening out here. Okay, cool. So can you see the guys out here, or should I now stop
I
this?
can see a few of them.
I can see a few of them. Okay, say thanks and bye to few of us.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
guys. Thanks
thanks,
for.
man. Hope you had a nice session, Suresh.
Yes,
Srinivas.
I hope you
Okay.
all had good session. So if you have any questions, please forward to Augustine, and Augustine will share it with me, and I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Cheers, man.
Yes,
Go done.
thank